Okay.
All right, there she is.
Greetings, Dr. Nobles. How
It is
are
very
you?
good to see you.
Very nice seeing you. And I heard you already in.
We're finished.
I see.
Yes, indeed.
Mhm.
We were just talking about the book, right?
Yes.
So
Mhm.
this book was published. When was this book published, Dr. Noble? I know I read it 2 years ago, but I know.
About 3 years ago, maybe. I don't really remember that kind of
Oh,
date.
yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah. No, we just mentioned we were mentioning the book and his what inspired him to write the book. It was
Mhm.
after a visit to Haiti after the earthquake, and you know the kind of like the trauma, sort of like a post-traumatic stress that the people had dealing with a tragedy like that.
Yes.
So yeah, so we were just talking a little bit about that. But I
Mhm.
believe Dr. Nobles also visited you at the Fondation a few times. Is that correct?
That's correct.
At
Yeah.
my pleasure. Mhm.
Yes. He's been in the yard of our fondation. Yes.
Awesome.
Sitting across from Desaline.
Absolutely. All right, great. So we could just go ahead and get started with our conversation. I didn't put together too many slides, but I did want to definitely mention, you know, the two books, these two books. I believe the one right here on the right,
Saku?
is it Saku?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely the island of. So is it the island of memes or the island of
It's
memes?
memes.
Memes. Okay. All right. Haiti's unfinished revolution. So you could go ahead and take it over, Ma, if you want, if you
Thank
like.
you. Thank you very much. Greetings to all of our participants who have joined us. I see Betty is there, and I'm sure I'll see many others. Everyone is here to honor our brother, Dr. Wade Nobles, to deepen our understanding of his work, his very important work of reflecting on what goes on, what has gone on with us, and what is going on today. And that's very important because if we don't properly assess what happened and the traumas that are carrying on today, then we can hardly talk about tomorrow. To talk about tomorrow, we have to properly assess what happened, the impact of what happened on us, and then we can go about making the proper corrections and advance towards tomorrow. So without further ado, welcome to all of you. Welcome to all the ones that we don't see, that are in us, around us, all about us, and who will guide us into greater understanding and better tomorrows. Welcome, Dr. Wade Nobles.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be with you. I prefer to be in your presence, but this is second best.
Thank you. Same here. So with Dr. Nobles, we're going to let's look a little bit his road. One of the things that impressed me, the first thing that I was really impressed about Dr. Nobles is that I was reading his biography. And it was the first time I saw somebody mention my grandfather. The biography starts with my grandfather or great grandfather was a slave. I said, whoa. I mean, I have had to say that sometimes, but to start off your biography and looking that straight in the eye and saying it boldly, I thought was somebody who had really gone quite high in the knowledge of self, for them to be able to just start off their biography with, hey, yes, Here's, please tell us a little bit about you, what you've done, how you come to be the person you are today.
Yeah, well, I think it's important that that those of us who have been, in quote, educated and end up having these professional portfolios that introduce the world to you, introduce you to the world, that we introduce who we are as well as whose we are. And it's the whose we are that really is, to me, most important. And so I crafted my bio to say that that who I belong to, this person named John Nobles and Annie Mae Cotton, and their parents were captive Africans enslaved, and they are with me even right now. And so I wanted to introduce them as who I belong to, who in fact I believe channel information through me from the invisible realm. And so I wanted to, even though I didn't say that specifically in the bio, I know those who have eyes to see saw it, and that's what I was attempting to do. You know, I like telling the story that when I was a child, and my brother and I were children before there was television. And my mother was actually working in a insane asylum in Massachusetts as a chambermaid. And she would come home each night and she would tell us, as part of her entertainment to her children, she would tell us stories. Some stories were about the courage of her father in the South and fighting, you know, Ku Klux Klan, etc. Other stories was about her workday. In her workday, she would tell us about these crazy white doctors and captured Black patients. And so she framed the conversation very differently. She was helping me to see that there was something wrong with psychology when the people who really needed some help were in charge, and the people who were patients were simply, in her language, captives. And so I say that I was sort of bred in those childhood stories from the age of 6 or 7 to become a psychologist, because what intrigued me was to try to understand what is the human functioning of African people, and not try to make our understanding of our own people filter through their lens, through Western psychology. And it's been an ongoing quest. I mean, the one of the books we have on the screen, Seeking the Saku, was really my attempt to capture almost 30 years of reading and writing and researching and publications on this quest to understand the formulations of an African psychology, and not just simply take what we were taught as graduate students and put blackface on Freud and give Jung a natural and say that's Black psychology. It had to be more than that, and it absolutely is more than that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I enjoy the fact that you mentioned how early on you you were trained in a certain way into psychology, but then also we say it was already awakened in you and you were already on that path. And probably, and that's one of the things I say to parents, observe your children. The doctor is a doctor at 2 and 3.
Yes.
Look at how they play. You have 4 or 5 children playing in a room. If you come in and say, oh, I have a headache, and nobody looks at you, there are no doctors there. But if there is one, that doctor, if it's 2 or 3, whatever, will get up and say, let me see your head. Oh, let me rub it for you. Let me kiss it for you. They will have a solution, what they view as a solution to your problem, your
Absolutely.
health problem.
Yes.
And I have observed this from many, many times, that you are who you are. The school might give you the protocol that this society has approved, but the school cannot make you a doctor if you're not.
That's right.
School cannot make you a lawyer if you're not.
Yes.
School cannot make you a businessman if you're not.
I think that is very true. And in fact, the Ifa tradition of spiritual science says that we have a conversation in heaven with the divine and select our path and purpose as we come to the earth. So we come through our mother's sacred womb already with a particular prescription to follow. And if we're wise and if we're blessed, we've come into a family that understands that and simply encourages you to be on your path. Unfortunately, because of westernization, most of us don't understand that is the role of parenting. Most of us think we have to make a child be something, when all we have to do is help them to elaborate on what they already are.
Absolutely. So very important for those of us who have young children to take the time to observe them and see who is there, and then encourage them in that field. We see that France has brought us to the cover of the island of Mims. So we see 4 Verves on this cover. Perhaps you, now before we touch the Verves, let's look at the colored circle.
Yes.
Dr. Nobles,
Yes.
can you tell us, enlighten us, please, about the circles?
Actually, what I was attempting to do, and you know, there's a symbolic imagery all around us. It's in our crafts, it's in our art, and so what I was attempting to do when I was creating the cover was to blend deep Bantu Congo thought with Haitian Voodoo. And the 4 colors of the circle is really a cosmogram coming out of Bantu thought, and it represents the 4 moments of the sun. Our transition from, at the yellow point, our spirits are in the invisible realm. I should point out that the thought is that we have a knowing and knowable spirit. And so at the point of at the yellow, we are in the spirit realm, and excuse me, and that's called the Musuni. In the spirit realm, we transition to the black dot and the black circle. And the black circle is called Kayla. It is at the point where we come from the invisible realm into the visible realm, and that it is codified as black. And I think it's because some real understanding that, if I can diverge for a moment, in the birthing process, when the egg is fertilized, it is surrounded by a melanin sheath. So every human being is born in blackness. And this blackness symbolically represents an important state. It is the piercing through the invisible realm to the visible realm and coming to the world with a path and purpose. That's the state of Kayla. And then from that point, we mature, we develop, we experience, and we are challenged with life and living, and we reach the highest point of our existence, hopefully, where we are matured and we are on fire. That's the red dot. And the red dot represents what's called Tukula in Bantu thought. It is where we are mature, where we are wise, where we are understanding, where we are able to recreate our own self, where life creates life. And then we move from that, this path of our spirit, move from that point to the 4th moment in the sun, which is the white dot. It really is. I want to be careful because I don't think I have the authority to change ancient ideas, but it really is symbolically painted as white, but really I think it is clarity. It is clearness. But that white spot, because unfortunately because of our westernization, when we see white, we start thinking, we knee-jerk back to colorizations of white and black people. But it's a white dot, it's a white spot, it's the point of clarity, and that's where we transition. Some people call that death, where we transition back into the invisible realm. And we repeat this 4 moments of sun eternally, each time coming back and getting better at being who we are. And so these 4 moments of the sun represent the trajectory of a knowing and knowable spirit from the invisible realm to the visible realm, back to the invisible realm. And that cycle is eternal. it is eternal, and it is in fact believed that that the realms, that reality is comprised of two realms. Again, the visible realm and the invisible realm, but the invisible realm is far greater than the visible. So if we have knowing and knowable spirit, our spirit knows more in the invisible than it does in the visible. And in fact, that's why we call upon our ancestors, because our ancestors who have transitioned, they see, know, and understand more, far more than we could ever know. So by invoking them, we bring that genius to our service.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Okay, so we understand why, we can already see why having an altar for the ancestors, for the parents, keeping pictures, keeping more memorabilia around.
Yes.
All of these things keep us in touch with the knowledge, because in the end, what are we? It's not what we look like. It's not all of that. It's what do you know? And your know determine what you do. So behavior comes from knowledge. If people are behaving, they don't have the knowledge they need to behave better.
Yes, yes. And that knowledge is not just they don't have the knowledge, oftentimes, and I think probably most of the time, it is they have the wrong knowledge. They have knowledge, but they have the wrong knowledge. And we as African people walk around knowing a lot of stuff, but we're knowing the wrong stuff. And so our behavior is reflection of that aberrant knowing that has been imposed on us.
Absolutely. So now we know, you each know that you are a know, a knowing, a knowable, and you have the ability to go back into the cosmos and have more knowledge. So if life is not right now where you want it to be with you, you have the power to increase your knowledge. Go back. Think on the grandma. Think on the great grandmas, those who had the chance to know them. Very recently, I had a little pain on my leg. And I woke up in the morning and I said, well, yesterday I had this little pain. And today I have this little pain again. And then I said, well, I'm not having it tomorrow morning. Because my grandmother always said, l'huile masqueriti, passons-t-il l'huile masqueriti too. So pour rub of this castor oil on it. And sure enough, I went back, got my bottle of castor oil, rub on my leg. Next morning, I jumped out the bed. No, nothing to disrupt me. So, see, the knowledge is there. We have to go back. We have to have the proper attitude. So we're not impressed with people's bottles and boxes. So we can go back to grandma and great grandma and grandpa and ask their guidance in the things that we're doing.
And that's very important, because I think our grandparents and great grandparents walked in the world communicating more profoundly with all the fauna and flora of reality. And so they knew that if you had a certain ailment, what greens to cook and how long to cook it, and what do you take the greens or do you take the pot liquor, and all these kinds of pharmacology that they were masters at, we didn't have put aside because we have taught that it is that old-timey ignorant stuff that our grandparents did. The other thing I want to make, what your comment, Bayyinah, is that it is important for, I think, our people to understand that being quiet is a good thing. That if you silence yourself and find that space where you can be quiet, the ancestors come to you and speak to you. And they speak to you in whispers. They speak to you in thoughts that you wonder, where did that thought come from? That is directly the silent, quiet, soft hand of the ancestors tapping you on your shoulder. So at that point, pay attention to what you're hearing, which you're being drawn to.
In fact, we have a saying in Haitian. We say, "Rete tranquille, c'est remède corps." To stay put is great medicine for the body. So it tells us, and it's, you know, when you running yourself down, you're looking for sickness. So take advantage of this time where there's less going everywhere. Don't fret. Have a nap. Do the things, the quiet things, the peaceful things that will get your body back on track. And take advantage. Now we're going to look at the vevers that Brother Nobles, Dr. Nobles has chosen to put on the cover. We'll start with the first one on the left, on top. And that is, if you are yourself and you are of Haitian descent, or you are Haitian, you should be able to say something about it, to have an idea. That's the veve of Dambala. Yes, bravo. Yes, that's the veve of Dambala, wild sparklers. Yes, you're correct. And what is Dambala? What does Dambala represent? Dambala is knowledge undivided. It's not having the knowledge of electricity or math or geometry here. No, it's all knowledge, unseparated, undivided. And that's why it's usually represented by a snake, which is the most... Oh, Najrak, Moslin. Hi, how are you? Okay. Yes. So the Dambala, that force, that law, is the law of all knowledge and the law of all flexibility. There is nowhere that the snake can go. It lives in fire, lives in water, lives on earth, lives in the air, it flies, it does everything. There's a snake type for every life form. So that's because it has unlimited knowledge. And that's where we go when we want to know. I don't know what Brother Nobles will add to.
Well, I think I want us, as we're thinking about the Veves, why our ancestors created this technology. And think about it as that there's a technology here. And the Veves, in fact, are sending us symbolism and messaging. And so then I would want people to ponder, why did our ancestors, there are no accidents in Veves. There are no mistakes, like I'm an artist, I draw something, oh, it was a mistake, oh, I like it, so I'm gonna keep it. That's not the process. So I would ask our family to think about, why are there 2 serpents? Why are there 8 stars? Why is there a fern bush? And then, because each one of those things has meaning, has deeper meaning in it. That's what I want. I can suggest or share with you my interpretation of those, but really, now's the time to be quiet. Now's the time to be still and to look at that veve. Each veve. There's more than this. I chose these 4 because in my readings and research, I think these 4 veves were the veves that guided the invocation of the Loa at the alligator swamp and ushered in the Haitian Revolution. But again, that's a small but important side. But if you look at the veves and ask, what are those? What's the deep meaning of it? I'll give one example. The fern, the fern star in the what do you call it? The Akan tradition in Ghana, the Adinkra symbols. The fern represents a word that stands for Aya. It means I am not afraid of you. So we think about this cross-fertilization of our memes. Actually, we'll see that our ancestors were creating a symbolism that invoke a certain character, a certain attitude, a certain place of conduct. Each veve has to be understood that way. And so again, you look at the column in the middle. What does that mean to you? Look at the two serpents. The two serpents are looking each other eye to eye. What does that mean? See, so we can begin to break down the deeper meaning of the veves, and then go back to that moment in time that was a spark of the Haitian Revolution, and ask what was really going on, what was really happening in terms of our ancestors taking charge of their connection to astral energy, and that astral energy having intelligence that we use to defeat the most powerful military force in the entire world.
Mm-hmm. And now that the professor has gotten you started, you should be seeing even more stuff.
Absolutely, I hope so. If you don't, just take it and put it on your wall and go to sleep. It'll come to you.
Yes, indeed.
We start wearing jewelry and dresses and shirts, and we have these babies as, in quotes, ornaments or decoration of our cloth. It's not just that. It is seeping into your molecular structure. And then you wonder why some things you just won't tolerate no more. Or you wonder why certain things are important for you to speak to. It's ancestral energy.
Absolutely. Thank you. Let's move to our right, top right, which this veve represents what? Who?
Easily done.
Easily done. And the person who spoke, can you tell us a little bit of what you see before the professor will go into it?
I see a heart. I see a dagger and other symbols on that representative of, that's it. As far as the picture. A sign of, look like can you hear me?
We can hear you and we can see you eating.
Oh!
And she's not sharing.
And you're not offering us any.
A friend of mine just got me some.
Dr. Ya is you have a lot going on right now, Dr. Ya.
Mm-hmm.
I am, and that's what I see.
Well, I could share what I see. I see the heart, and it looks like the heart is being pierced, like by a dagger almost. And of course, I see the cross in the middle of the heart.
Okay, if I can help a little bit, I want us to start thinking about how we're seeing based upon our westernization. Is that a dagger? I ask you. Is the dagger stabbing the heart? I ask you. Is the heart a heart that we see in romantic sense of Valentine's Day, or is the heart what the ancient Kemites talked about as the intelligence of the heart? And so and that's how I see it. That's how I believe I answered, was trying to send us this message. It's the intelligence of the heart, and that instrument is maybe a dagger, but I don't think it's stabbing it. I think it is tickling it. It is tickling the heart to ignite the heart, to inspire the heart, to wake up the heart. All right. And so if we look at the lower Ursula Dante, what was that lower about? And then come back to looking at the veve that represents that lower. So again, I want us to always challenge ourselves. Am I seeing these symbolism with the meaning that is Western or the meaning that is African? And we're all unfortunately been contaminated with Western sight. And so everything we come up with, even the point where where we look at, if I may, in the streets now, when police accost our children, they're taught to hold up their hands and say, I give up, or don't shoot me. And that holding up the hands in the Western thought is a sign of surrender, some sign of submission. In the ancient Kemetic side, this is the sign of Ka, spirit. And so at the moment I'm in my danger, maybe what I'm doing is invoking the power of spirit to protect me, and not that I'm submitting to the savagery of the police officer who's confronting me. So I'm just trying to give you an example of how we need to always try to question ourselves in terms of, am I seeing the world with the imposed Western thought on me, or am I trying to break free and call upon the insights of our ancestors of Africa and give that meaning to it? And again, you take every little piece of that veve, every little piece of veve. The heart looks like it has a kind of what do you call it? I want to say, the cloth that see, this is a good example. The cloth that the Irish kilts are made of, a little tweed cloth, tweeding. See, my Western says, is that a tweed pattern there? But it may not be nothing to do with tweed. It may have something else to do with crossroads, directionality. You see, so you got to keep on working with it, working with invoking our African essence.
It's also the way we deal with land, agriculture.
Yeah, we're not hearing you.
The agriculture, the farmers. Oh,
can you hear me?
I hear you fine. Yes, I hear you, but I'm not muted.
Yeah, we can hear everyone.
I didn't touch anything.
Can you hear us, Dr. Nobles? Maybe your volume is low down.
Okay,
So
I'm not hearing.
You hear my Bello fine.
Tell somebody in this thing here.
Okay, go ahead, Ma.
Okay. So farmers at home, they would draw, their land space. That's one thing that it makes me think of. But as you can see in all the veves, the stars are always there. The stars are always there. So nothing is limited to just.
Volume down. It's coming up again.
Okay, stars are always present. So we always know that we're dealing with the cosmos. We're not dealing with a piece of land or a small area of the planet. It's always looking cosmic because the stars are always there, and everything is, the limits are established by stars and suns in all the veves. So I don't know if the sound has, no?
Let's see.
Okay.
Okay, can you?
Yes, now I hear.
All right. Okay, so we can look at, well, we're not gonna spend all the time on the veves, but the exercise of looking at the two veves show you how when you look at something created by us, you need to not look at it just, remember we saw in Learn to Know Yourself? We have to question everything. We have to build the courage so we can speak our mind on things. We have to observe. Observe is not just looking. We have to go into details. Why there are 4 stars here? Why there are 6 over here? Why is it there are here and there's that? We have to do this for ourselves so we can really capture the information that they have put in there for us. If we stay to the limits of things, to the superficial part, we will not be getting the knowledge that they have. Same is true with songs. Oh yes, I'm into Voodoo and I know this song and I know this dance. Yeah, that's fine, but that's not it. What is the message? What information does this song bring to you? And that's when you start to really go into what your ancestors have left for you. When you start understanding, when you start grabbing and capturing the information that they have put in there for us, in whatever form they put it.
So this is actually a workbook that Dr. Noble sent me earlier today. And I read through some of it. It was really informative. So what led you to create this workbook, Dr. Noble?
Well, the workbook was really an attempt to look at the fact that at the earlier time of this pandemic, people were being told to shelter in place, to distance themselves, and to wash your hands, to wear gloves, to wear masks, and all those things were thought out as important for us to get through the crisis of this pandemic. And so I began to think about the fact that we are, well, two things. One is that sheltering in place should not be seen as a problem for us. It should be seen as an opportunity. If we are placed in our homes together and placed in a living environment with folks, then we can begin to engage in some activities that are restorative. How do we restore the sense of family? How do we begin to engage in conversation that is deeper than, oh, I'm pissed off because I can't go to the movies. Rather than have that conversation, I tried to create a kind of interactive workbook that allowed us to have a guided conversation. And the guided conversation essentially was centered around what I was thinking of as 5 R's. 5 R's. To remember, to remind, to reframe, to revitalize, and to reward. And I put in the book exercises that allowed us to remind or to remember who we are. This is a good time. This is a perfect time to remember who we are, or to remember that one of the first imposed sheltering in place was in the hull of a slave ship. Let's think about that.
Yes,
how did we get through that sheltering in place and come out being strong, come out being hitting the shores as Bob Marley said, fighting on arrival, fighting for survival. How did that happen? Remember that. So that's what. So there are exercises in the workbook that ask us to remember who we are and whose we are. And then there's a section that talks about it deals with remind, the R remind. And the R remind essentially says we have to remind ourselves of what this is really about. Remind ourselves of the terror that is addressed by us, and don't believe that because don't believe that your difficulty is because you're being forced to shelter in place. For some of us, it means sheltering in place in a condominium. Some of us shelter in place, remind ourselves that there are members of our family that are homeless, that are in jail, and have to remind ourselves of the various conditions that our people find themselves in, and how do we speak to that? How do we address that? That's different reminding. And so I lay out sort of not exercise, but opportunities for us to engage in deeper conversation, to engage in deeper thought as we are sheltering in place. And then in terms of the third R is reframe, and the reframe really has to do with recreating our directives. What are we really about? And it's a time for us to look at how we've been westernized, and then to reframe our, in quote, privilege, or to reframe our condition of difficulties, and reframe that as something that we can begin to talk about, creating a way that not only the one survives, but we all survive. And not only is the goal to survive, but the goal is to go beyond the post-pandemic and to thrive as one African world. That's what I'm hoping we can engage in as we shelter ourselves in place, as we're given the task of reframing the condition. And then the revitalize was just reminding ourselves that this vital, that energy, spirit, life is all around us. And we are part of this life space that walks in the world. And to give our children opportunities to be creative. Let's revitalize old folks doing our dances in our time and ask our young ones to show us what that looked like in their time. So we begin to have an intergenerational conversation, to look at poetry, look at the works of Langston Hughes, and then talk about what's the comparable wordsmith genius that our young people are looking at. They may not be reading a book because that's not what they do in their time, but there may be some videos or some tele instruments that they're dealing with. So we can begin to revitalize, discuss ways in which we can engage in this. In the final R is to reward. We never reward ourselves for being good. We talk about ourselves for being stupid. We talk about ourselves for being bad. We talk about ourselves for being not as whatever. But we never take the moment just to reward ourselves for our G's, however small, however tiny. Engage in the fact that it is good to be good because it is good. And then how do we work that in? Looking at the way I am better. I mean, even I suggest in the workbook that a salutation we could adopt a salutation that says, rather than say, hey, what's up, we can adopt a salutation to say, I am better because of you. When I see you, Bella, I'm better because of you. And then that links us together in such a profound, deep way that I am rewarded by just being in your presence. Think about how our communities would operate if we walked around saying, I get a reward for being in your presence. And not that I got to hold my purse tight, or I got to worry about, I got to hunt him down because he owes me $5. He ain't paid me in a long time. All those crazy stuff we do. And then what wraps all of this workbook up is that I've rescued a term that, again, I've been doing a lot of work with Bantu Congo belief. In the Bantu Congo, there's a word called Zola, Z-O-L-A. Zola, it means love, but not the romantic love. Zola is love because love activates the energy of self-healing. So we've been suggesting that people Zola up on each other. How do we Zola up on each other? So if we Zola up on each other, I am activating the energy of your self-healing. So whatever, that's what Bella, you were talking about the child in the room playing, and you come with a headache, and the child gravitates you because that's to be a doctor, but she gravitates you, and you think, oh, my baby loves me so much, which is true. The baby is Zola up on you, but we didn't have the language. See, it's important to take back our African mouth, take back our African tongue, and then use that to say, here are some concepts that we could walk around with. So we say, we have hashtag Zola up on us. And then how do we begin to engage in all the time Zola up and on each other? And all these 5 interactive exercises are grounded in the idea of how do I activate the self-healing potential of my people? And in activating it in you, I also activate it simultaneously in me. That's the magic of our ancient sciences.
Right. Absolutely.
And then there's several other things. We look at the 10 initiatory masterpiece come out of ancient. There's several different technologies. I'm using the word technologies that our ancestors created that we can now rescue, take them back, look at them, brush them off, clean them up, refine them, and then use them in our day walk around times. And this was an opportunity for me to say at this moment, we may want to have the time, not to worry about if I'm going to go to work on time, because you ain't, not to worry about if I'm going to do whatever, force around, but sit quietly and take this workbook, and engage with your loved ones. Engage with those you cherish. And it can be even done telecommunication, because you don't have to be in a face-to-face with a person. You can have the book in your home, and I can have my book in Miami, and we can work through this together, just as we're talking right now, and begin to reframe, rescue, redefine the African essence of being knowing and noble spirits.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, brother. And I see lots of comments are coming in, and one of them is saying, how do we get the book? Do we have an email where we can send for it?
Yes, I sent the whole book as an attachment, and I could give you in the book. There's an email where we're asking people to send their creations, and I can give that to you, Zola, and you can share with. I guess you have a way of reaching back to all the folk that are here. Or maybe I can. Y'all are stretching me now, but maybe I can just type it in. I can type it in here, and everybody have it.
Yeah, you can type it in if you like, but also if a lot of people are asking for your contact email and stuff also. So whatever you want me to share, I can share after this webinar. I could email it out to everyone who registered.
Yes, you can. You can give my email, and
Okay.
and you can share the book as well. That'll be easy to count on my fingers because
Yeah, no problem.
you're
I'll
gonna deal
take
with the
care of it.
handicap. You deal with the handicap when you count on my fingers.
Yeah, so what I'll do is everyone that registered for today's event, I'll make sure in the email that goes out after this webinar, everyone gets a copy of the workbook. Is that okay with you, Dr. Nobles?
Yes.
All right, great.
Thank you. Thank you. Don't forget me. I didn't register, but I want my copy.
I'll save you a
Thank
copy,
you.
Mom.
Thank you very much. But let us remind our audience as well. Remember one of the laws of nature. We have seen this a number of times during our different webinars. The law of reciprocity.
Does the computer have a camera on it?
Does the what?
So, the law of reciprocity. We take in and we give. Always apply the law of reciprocity. That makes the difference between us and others. We are a people of reciprocity.
Shay.
Whatever we receive, we always give. Thank you. All right. That is very good, Dr. Nobles. Thank you very much for this work. Thank you for all you've done. Thank you for what you're doing right here, right now with us. And thank you for all that you will give us in the future. And that's important when we have our own people who take the time in every situation to figure out what is a way for us to draw the best of whatever situation. And that's important, very important. Always make yourself, work on yourself on that. If you find yourself saying, oh, I wish I could, stop, full stop, and say, well, what it is I can do now with what I have now, and what is possible now, what can I do? That is the healthy way to deal with things. Whatever comes your way, always look at it in the most positive light. And that's what has kept our ancestors going through 400 years of monstrous Euro-Christian slavery and coming out of it and finding the strength to raise us and so we could be who we are today, thanks to their strength. So
Yes.
We must have that kind of strength for our next 7 generations. Don't just think the next one.
That's right.
We have to project into the future so that we can make things happen our way, on our planet, in our cosmos. All right,
All right, so we do have a few questions. Are you guys in the mood to take some questions?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
All right, great. So first up is Marlene Jean. Marlene, if you're still there, you could unmute yourself and ask a question.
Yes, can you hear me today?
We
Yes.
hear you fine.
Oh, wow. Thank you. They have opened up the ways for me. I can speak now. Thank you, both of you, for your knowledge and information. My question, it's not really a question, it's more like a comment to what you said earlier, Dr. Nobles, concerning the consciousness of the people of Haiti with what happened during the slavery and everything, and how, as you were discussing it, that our consciousness is sort of, I would, is sort of, what's the word would I use? I don't remember what the word you use, but it's fragmented, to say the least. So my question maybe is, which Dr. Bellows talk about that a lot, you know, how do we move forward? Because you can feel it, what you said. Yeah, you can feel it, you can see it. And in fact, I feel like almost 300 years later, you know, 200 plus years of independence, I feel right now we're at the height of that fragmentation. You can see it now more than ever.
Yeah, well, I think that I use the language shattered.
Shattered, that's what you use.
I think that in terms of human functioning, there are two important ideas. One is consciousness, and the other is identity. Mm-hmm. Consciousness is how you understand reality outside of you. And I'm being simplistic here. And identity is how the world sees you, how they identify you in time and space. Because of our assault by white supremacy and racism, our identity has gone through a whole lot of mess, even to the point where we've struggled with just being identified as Black because they made Black evil and wrong. All right. Now back to the consciousness issue. The shattered consciousness is because our seeing the world has been distorted or broken because we don't see the world, we only see Europe in our consciousness. And so everything that we assess as a way of saying what is the good, what is the bad, what is the appropriate, what is the inappropriate, is filtered through a Western lens. That's the shattering of it. And so in my using this symbolic imagery of shattered consciousness, I'm asking myself the question. I have not answered it yet because I need you to help me. Mm-hmm. How do we look at this shattered consciousness and recognize as a pane of glass is shattered, it is no longer clear. You can no longer see through it clearly. But when you're able to fix that shattering, there may be still some places where the glue the broken pieces together, and you still have some distortion there, and then you're taught, don't look at the glue, look at the part where it's clear. You see? So I think we have to figure out how do we recognize that our shattered consciousness can be repaired, but in the repairing of it, we're going to need some scars. Mm-hmm. And those scars may be permanent. I don't know. I'm not going to, I don't know the answers. I'm on a quest.
Right.
My mother sent me on a quest in heaven. God said, you're going to do this. Now go to the earth and do it. So I'm trying to do what God has told me to do, but I'm not finished yet. And we need each other because all of us are in this conversation. So I think that when I looked at the architects of the Haitian Revolution, it was clear to me that those brothers and sisters were unbelievably majestic. That's the only word I can call them. They were majestic. But in their majesty, they had some flaws and some cracks. And those cracks shaped what we now see as Haiti. And so we have to look at that kind of carefully. Look at that. Again, I'm using Haiti as a case study because I can go to Jamaica, I can go to Ghana, I can go to Mississippi, I can go to England, I can go to France, I can go wherever African people are, and we're going to see the same phenomenon. And so it's exciting to me because if we can solve this problem using Haiti as our diagnosis, we can solve it for the whole African world. You know, and so we got to begin to look at that. So I'm posing as a possibility this idea. In the book I talk about memes. Memes are ideas. They're actually sensoria, senses. They're sensoria structures that replicate themselves. So there's certain ideas that get in our consciousness that replicate themselves, and it shapes how we raise our children. Idea, if I could use the example, and you all please allow me to apologize because my wife is in the room, but she doesn't like me to use this language. But if I use the idea that niggas ain't shit, two vulgar words, nigga and shit, both of them are vulgar. All right? But if I use that word niggas ain't shit, and we grew up with niggas ain't shit, then we will end up having behavior that says, I got to go to the white community to buy ice cream because white ice is colder than black ice. You see, because in our minds literally defy the laws of nature, because we've been mimetically infected with ideas. Ideations. Ideas are the substance of behavior. If you walk in the world with a set of ideas, and I use now the term mimetically infected. If I'm walking the world mimetically infected, I will be given free will, and I will choose to do something against my own interest. Like there are black folks in the United States who say they voted for Trump and they're going to vote for him again. You see, that's crazy, but it's not. But I'm supposed to be a psychologist, so I shouldn't say that's crazy because I'm making a diagnosis without talking to the patient. But the fact of the matter is that's insane, because they're mimetically infected, and to be mimetically infected, you'll make choices and you'll take chances that are against your very survival. And if you look at the decisions that Toussaint was making, that Mackendal was making, that Bookman was making, that Dessalines was making. If you look at those majestic men and women, and look at the decisions they made, look at the belief. You know, one example I give in the book is that Toussaint really thought he was French, in my opinion. And he decided to write a letter to Napoleon and tell Napoleon, "You the head of the whites, I'm the head of the blacks. Come on, man, we can get together." See, that's mimetic infection. This man is trying to kill all of you and all your people. But at that moment in his life, he decided that he was clearly majestic and a military genius. Majestic and a military genius. But in his decision making, the ideas that were embedded in his consciousness in some ways crippled him. And I take each one of our, you can I don't want to get no in trouble, but you can look at the leadership in Haiti right today, and as how mimetically infected or how mimetically liberated are they as they make decisions about the benefit of all Haitians. You know, when I was in Haiti and I walked around, I was surprised. There was this really kind of, in my perception, and I could have been distorted in my own view, but in my perception, there was this group called the white elite. There was a group that were privileged so-called mulattoes, and there were groups that were poor blacks. And I had an opportunity and a privilege to talk to each of those categories of folk. All of them said deep, "I'm Haitian. Don't mess with me, I'm Haitian." The white elite said it, the privileged mulatto said it, the poor black said it. But each one was in their own place, never to blend together. And even the privileged mulatto were making decisions about whether or not some poor black could have a tent in front of their business establishment, and that they were offended by these poor blacks who were struggling to stay alive. You see the example I'm giving? That's mimetically infected. Now, I take nothing away from the fact that those businessmen and women in Haiti were genius at their entrepreneurship. This takes nothing away from Toussaint being a genius in his military acumen. But because of our consciousness, and this is where I'm trying to add a part of different conversation, because of the consciousness, they can have that genius, that ability, and still be mimetically infected and be not good for our people.
Or themselves.
Or themselves. Because it's always interactive, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. The absence of Ubuntu in the thinking.
Absolutely. And so that's why we have to go back and rescue our deep thought. See, they've captured our stuff as savagery when they are the savages. They've captured ourselves, our thought as less than profound. But we got to go past that and look at the deep thought of our ancestors and to examine it. I don't want to be romantic with the ancients. I don't want to be awed by the ancients. I want to look at what their pronouncements were, what they accomplished, and then see how I can rescue that, work with it. Sometimes we need to even refine it. We need to correct it, because it's not this romantic thing that everything that Imhotep did was good. I don't know. I think Imhotep was a genius. So let me go look at the thinking of Imhotep. Look at Tehuti. Let's go look at the thinking of Tehuti, and then take what it is that they left us. And they were so smart. They said, I'm so proficient in understanding the future, I'm gonna leave my knowledge in the brick. I'm gonna write it in the stone so that you white folks can't come and erase it. Napoleon can shoot off the nose, but you ain't gonna get rid of all the hieroglyphs, all the metal nexus that's carved in stone. So now go back and understand it. Sit there and look at it, and not just ancient Kemet. Go to Nubia. Go to Zimbabwe. Go to the deep inner side of Haiti and talk to the old folks. Go down to Alabama, Mississippi, and talk to them old grandmamas and grandmamas that you think they're mispronouncing the English language when they're really speaking in code. All those things we should be doing as we begin to rescue ourselves. That's what we have an opportunity now to come out of this pandemic with they're talking about a new normal. Well, the new normal has to be the old African. And we got to begin to think about how we do that.
Absolutely. Wow, great stuff. All right, so we have the questions are filling up here. So next question comes from Franklin. Franklin, you could go ahead and unmute yourself and ask a question to Dr. Nobles and Professor Bello.
Thank you so very much, all of you, for being here. I love our meetings, and I learned so much. Money, it's priceless, like the MasterCard commercial. It's priceless, all you do. I have a quick question in regards to, I did put it in the chat. Earlier when we were speaking about honoring our ancestors, which I do try to do, I try to inculcate that into my children, as I was not raised in the ways of our ancestors, but I'm getting into it. I myself personally, I hope my mother is not listening to this. I am adopted, and so my biological parents have passed away. I do not have any photos. I actually don't know what my father looked like at all. And so I really don't know much about them. I don't know when my dad was born. I know when my biological mother was born. And so in doing my own research, in seeking, it feels almost sometimes wrong, like I'm betraying my mother who raised me when I do these things. But I also feel like the fact that I don't know the others, that I'm not doing it right. Like I don't even know if it works. So how do you go about it when you have a background like myself, when you have almost nothing to go on?
If I can share.
Go ahead. Please go.
If I can share, I tried to. Some of you may know the Nganga name Yafukiao. I was a close student of Yafukiao for about 3 years before he passed, and Yafukiao told me that there were ones of us who are born who are beyonders. Beyonders are those who can see beyond the moment, both in the past and in the future. And so I asked him that if that's something unique to special people born, or all of us beyonders. He said all of us are by DNA beyonders, but we are not given the encouragement to use it. And so when I take that insight and I look at my travels throughout Africa, a lot of times Africans will have a salutation, and they'll call people Baba or Iya, or they'll call people Auntie or Uncle. And they're not their blood, any of those things, because in the deep esoteric beliefs, all adults are the Babas to all children. All the adults are Iyas to all children. And all the siblings of those adults are your uncles and aunties. So you call everybody auntie. You call every adult person auntie. So I'm saying this to the sister that you did not know your biological parents, as I think I heard you say, but you did know parents. And if you were blessed, those parents were nurturing to you. So I would start with them in my quest, and then I would also look at the time and place of where your parents' age. Because if my father was born in 1900, so by 1914 he was thinking he was grown. I can go back and look at what were black men doing in 1914 in Edgefield, South Carolina, where my father was born. And I can begin to understand how he walked in the world, because he didn't walk any different than the other 14-year-old black men in South Carolina at the time. So I could begin to craft an understanding of who my folk were, because we were folk together. And so if I can just do a timeline and begin to look at where my parents my biological parents were by age and place, I can get a sense of who they were. And that's what I would invite you to do. But don't disregard the fact that the people who raised you were your mom and daddy. And if they were good, if they were not good, disown them. I mean, we ain't got to struggle with this. If someone's doing you wrong, just don't waste time with it. Disown them. But if they were good with you in any capacity, then honor that goodness and work with that. But also, you can get a good picture of who your biological parents are by doing a timeline of their time and their place. You know, what was it like to be living in New York in the 1920s, in Harlem? And we can get a sense of that. And if my father was 20 years old in New York, wearing a zoot suit with a long keychain, I know something about how he strolled. I know what his swagger was about. And I can reclaim that. The final thing I want to suggest to you, to all of us, is that these ancestors, somebody in the past, we are the ancestors. Mm-hmm. Each and every one of us is a walking ancestor. So look into yourself and begin to really meditate on who you are, because that's a reflection of your ancestors' understanding.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Okay, next question comes from Kamai and Suriba. Kamai and Suriba, if you're still there, you could unmute and ask a question.
Hello, are you hearing?
Yes.
Hey. Thank you very much for this opportunity to listen to you. I would like to, first of all, sorry for my bad English. I'm Brazilian, I'm not native speaking, but I would like to make a comment, and maybe this folds into a question, I'm not quite sure. It's a comment about, first of all, we have in this conversation and the last one, a lot of questions regarding the place geographically our ancestors are from, and these doubts and a lot of blanks we have in our history because of this trauma we are all into. But I would like to say that was born in the American continent, we are from a very it's kind of small part of the African continent. So we are somewhere in between Togo and Angola, all of us. So this gives us hints about where to look for information on old customs, old cultures and religions and spiritual practices. And I would like to comment also that maybe we, as we are Brazilians, we very familiar with religious traditions. We have candomblé, which is sort of alike Santeria and alike Voodoo. It's almost the same. And this religious practice somehow fill the blanks that we have in this recounting our own history, because when we have a religious practice that is developed from a root that brings us all the material that we feel missing into ourselves, somehow this completes our existence. So I would like to ask and also to suggest that maybe for some people that feels empty because of this large blanks that we have in our own narratives about ourselves, maybe to seek for these religions and to try to find there some answers or some practices that reconnect us with ourselves or with our ancestors, maybe from direct answers from them through Ifa and Curry games, Búzios we call in Brazil, or other oracles practices, or maybe just looking inside and find what is missing. And maybe this unfolds into a question to you both. If don't you think that the religion would take a really big role in our emancipation as people, because this could give us a better understanding of, I don't know how to put this in words, but I believe that culture, spirituality is a big foundation of a culture. And as we are living in a society built on a religious base that is not ours, this brings much of our how can I say, our misunderstanding about ourselves. So if we could practice more or go deep into these religious practices that are ours, maybe we could fill these blanks that we are missing so much. I don't know if I could make myself understandable. I hope you could understand my point. I'm struggling with the words, but that's it. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Suriba. Yes, we understood you. You're quite clear, in fact. And thank you for making the effort. Yes. So I don't know if Professor Nobles wants to answer first.
I would like to share. I'm not sure it's an answer, but I want to share. First, I think with Suriba, I think you begin by saying, my English is bad.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, what crime did your language do? Did your language rob an old woman crossing the street? A vagrant? You see, the idea that, I hope I can make a point, the idea that we believe that the way we speak their language is bad is part of the mimetic infection. It's part of us making them the hidden standard of the good. Yeah. And everything else we do is an approximation of their good. This is a small point that I want, but I think it's an important one, because as we walk in the world, we have this invisible standard surrounding us called Europe, called Western thought. And everything is an approximation to them, and we have our own intrinsic good. So we got to go back to our own intrinsic whatever and use it. Even to the point of, if I may, look at the idea of our traditions being what I call spirit sciences being religions. The etymology of the word religion is religament, to retie to some theology. Well, if the ancient thought of the Bantu say that we are divine energy made manifest, that we are in fact God's walking in the world, how do I use a system that says I have to see God outside of me? And therefore I got to create a set of practices that allow me to reconnect to God. All I got to do is be quiet. And I will hear, as Maya Angelou says, quiet yourself and you will hear the voice of God. So one thing, so I think I would ask you to, I think you're absolutely correct, that looking at those spirit sciences called candomblé, called Ifa, called Voodoo, these are spirit science, these are the sciences that our ancestors created to understand how humans be and function in the world. So I throw away it being a religion. I'm not tying myself back to something. I'm simply activating the science in its technology. Think about the Orishas. The Orishas or the Loas. They are concentrations of energy that create a certain character, conduct, and consciousness. That's different than saying I got to have some kind of special little ceremony. Otherwise, I'm not practicing my religion right. I hope you understand what I'm trying to share as a contrast. That we got to break away from the Western prism. It's like we're looking at the world through a Western prism, and everything gets diffracted and distorted. So we have to break away from that Western prism and then ask ourselves, what am I seeing with clear eyes? And what I see when I look at that, and you see I'm wearing glasses, so I'm not clear yet, but what I see is that our ancestors created a science of how to be. And they created technologies on how to utilize that be, how to utilize that being. So I think that what we're calling candomblé, voodoo, or Ifa, all those what they call traditional African religions are actually original human sciences. And so as a scientist, I need to look at how I function in the world as a being. As a being. Whatever came on the screen did was sort of strange, but it's sort of, well, I don't know what I hope.
Very good, very good. To this, I would like to add, one of the most interesting experience for me in Voodoo was when I first went to a funeral. And I don't usually go to funerals to anybody, but I said, well, I have to at least go once to a Voodoo funeral. And I was absolutely fascinated. They cannot bury you until they name to whom you belong. That means your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your this, your that, they have to go back as far back as possible. And they, ask, who does this body belongs to? And then they start the naming. Who's this? Who did this and who did that and that, and who's married to this one and had blah, 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 blah. So you cannot be into this structure and not know who you are to a degree, to an important degree. Because you have to leave the information, you have to make the information available so that you can be sent away properly.
And again, if I can take what Bayyinah just said as a science, the science of the voodoo, the technology of the voodoo burial was to expose the genetic code of the being that is being transitioned. If I can read the genetic code, then I can know where the genetic code can be replicated. And in fact, in the tradition in the United States, when we bury somebody, we have what's called a repast. And people come back from the burial. In New Orleans, it's cool because they have dancing umbrellas and they do the second line coming back. But every Black American funeral has a repast when you come back from the burial site and you sit together and you eat and you catch up on whose child is that, who's that, who's that. So we reconnect the lineage. That's important. But what I was sharing with a friend of mine recently, that we probably